Hello and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be painting Felix Jaeger, the famous adventurer and poet from the old world. If you enjoyed the video then please like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. After using a spray undercoat of grey cere from Games Workshop, I then painted a highlight onto his leggings using matte white from Army Painter. Next I began the trickiest part of the paint scheme, the stripes on his leggings. I used royal blue from Vallejo, which has really nice coverage so it goes on very easily. This is great as it means I don't have to go over the same line twice. It's important to make sure you're in a comfortable position and you are relaxed when trying to paint fiddly details like this. The Gotrek and Felix models are 30 years old now and they're no longer in production. I bought mine on eBay about 10 years ago. There's some really good books which tell about their adventures which I highly recommend you check out. They are some of my favourite minis from Warhammer and I really enjoy painting them for these videos. I think when painting really difficult details, the best thing you can do is get some good lighting that really shows clearly what you're doing and where your brush is going as well. Once the leggings were done, I used leather brown from Vallejo to undercoat the boots. I was being really careful to not go over any of the stripes that I just painted, as that would have been a real pain to try and fix. Once the boots were undercoated, I used Monster Brown from Army Painter for the first highlight. I'm not really trying to make this very detailed, it's just to capture all of the flat areas that would be a bit lighter than the shadows. For the next highlights on the boot, I used US Field Drab from Vallejo. This time I'm trying to be a bit more careful just to capture the raised areas where the light would be reflecting a bit more from the leather. I used a matte black to undercoat the chainmail on the model. I'm a bit unsure how necessary this step actually is, to be honest with you. I tend to do it on all my metallics, but to be honest with you, you probably don't need to. I feel that what it does do though is allow you to leave a little bit of shadow in the recesses if you need to. Next I moved on to one of the largest areas on the model, which is the cloak, and I used Corn Red from Games Workshop as the undercoat. I actually found that this went on really smoothly for a red, and it didn't take more than 2 light coats to get good coverage on the model, which I was quite happy with. When doing the base coat on the cloak, I was trying to be as careful as possible not to go over any of the previously painted parts. I'm normally like this because I don't really like having to go back and fix any mistakes that I've made, but obviously if you do, it's not a problem. You can just go back over any kind of splashes or bits where you've gone over the edges and tidy them up. For the chainmail I used dark steel from Vallejo. This is a really good colour, it's one of my favourite metallics that I use. It goes on very smoothly, you only ever really need 1 coat for it, and it's also very, very shiny and reflective when it's dry, which is a really nice finish for any swords or metallic parts that you need to look like that. I used dark tone wash from Army Painter on the chainmail vest. I didn't want the vest to look super clean and shiny because he is an adventurer, he's out in the wilderness, he hasn't got time to necessarily buff up his chainmail, but at the same time I didn't want it to look too rusty. I do think that Felix would look after his kit, he is quite experienced, he knows what he's doing, so dark tone is a good middle ground I think. For the first highlights on the cloak I used Dragon Red from Army Painter. I made sure the paint was quite thin and then applied it liberally over all of the raised areas on the cloak, and by using a really thin consistency, when it dries it does allow a little bit of the base colour to show through underneath as well and makes it a bit more blended in. For the next cloak highlight I used Pure Red from Army Painter. Again I made sure the paint was quite thin and I went over all of the raised areas again, but this time I was trying to leave a little bit of the previous highlight showing around the edges just to kind of have a gradual transition between the colours, and this paint goes on really nicely as well, so it wasn't difficult to paint on at all, and when it dries it does blend in nicely with the previous layer. For the final highlight on the cloak I used Bloody Red from Vallejo. This was really just applied to the very tips of the raised areas just to give that nice vibrant finish. I undercoated the sleeves with Angel Green from Army Painter. I use green as it's a nice complementary colour to the red of his cloak. To add highlights to the sleeve, I first used Wizard's Orb and then Elemental Bolt, which are both from Army Painter. These are really nice colours and they make the green sleeves look very vibrant. For the final highlight, I used Toxic Mist. I painted the accessories on his belt with Greedy Gold. I used a wash on the gold pieces just to make the details stand out a little bit more. For all of the skin I used an undercoat of Cadian Flesh Tone. I wanted the skin to have a little bit of colour to it but not to be as tanned as Gotrek. When highlighting skin, it's important that the paint isn't too thick or too thin, as you want the highlights to show up, but you also don't want them to be too transparent. For the final skin highlight, I just wanted to capture the highlighted areas on the face, such as the cheekbones, the nose, the brow and the chin, as well as the things on his hands like the knuckles and fingers as well. To paint his blonde hair, I didn't want to use a yellow as that would look very unnatural, so I actually used a kind of mustardy brown colour as the undercoat. To highlight the hair, I could have used a dry brush, which probably would have been a little bit easier, but as the hair is so well defined in the sculpt, it was actually not too difficult just to paint on with a brush, so that's what I did. I finally got round to giving the sword its black undercoat. The reason that I didn't do this before is I had a habit of holding the model by the sword, so it would have rubbed off anyway, but at this point it's pretty much the last thing that I need to paint. I debated whether to try and paint the sword with non-metallic metal, but the heavy metal paint from Scale 75 is so good that in the end I decided just to use that. It goes on really smoothly and it gives a really shiny finish when it's dry as well. I gave the glyphs on the sword a dark wash as I really want them to stand out when they're painted. I was debating what colour to use for the sword handle, and in the end I decided on bronze, which is a bit of a nod back to the original paint job from Games Workshop. For the glyphs on the sword and for the detailing on his buckle and brooch, I decided to use the Elemental Bolt and Toxic Mist combo that I used on his sleeves, just to tie those into the model but also make them look like they were jewels or kind of magical in nature. I used a brown wash on the sword handle just to dull it down a little bit and also to bring out some of the details as well. I gave the glyphs on the sword a blue wash just to give them a little bit of a glow and try and highlight the magical aspect of them. And with that, the model itself is now finished. All I'm going to do is paint the base with Goblin Green. Again, just going back to the old way that Games Workshop used to base their models, and also to match my Gotrek model. I gave the base a green wash just to bring out the details, and then gave it a highlight of deep yellow as well, which is the old style that these bases were painted in. And finally I painted the rocks with a dark basalt grey and then gave them a highlight as well, and that was the model finished. I'm really happy with how the model came out in the end, and I think it looks great with Gotrek as well. It's taken me about 10 years to get around to painting this model, and the actual figure itself is about 30 years old now, so it was about time that it got a paint job. If you did enjoy this video, then please do remember to like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you soon.